talking about conquering the behavioral interview questions. My name is Andres Mota, and it's my pleasure to be here with you all and provide you a little bit more information in terms of behavioral questions, how to deal with them, how to prepare for them, and hopefully lead you in the right path to acing that interview. And as I go through today, please feel free to stop me if you want to mute yourself and ask me a question or send us a question in the chat. We'll be moderating that as well. So any point that you would like us to, uh, you know, pause a little bit and ask about that, let us know. So for today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about what are behavioral questions. We're going to talk about the common questions that we see in interviews, how to build your answers using the STAR method, and a few tips for the interview after you have prepared your answers or while you're in the process of preparing those answers and getting ready before that big moment. And basically, when you're doing a behavioral interview or doing any regular interview, a behavioral question focus on assessing how do you deal with work or life situations per your past works and experiences. So it's not really a matter of seeing what your expertise is in certain areas, but more so your thought process and your logic behind the decisions that you make, which is important because sometimes we as people, um, most of us don't really have that ability or take a little bit of time to develop that ability of reflect on our actions and reflect on how we perform our work or even our basic day-to-day responsibilities. So for behavioral questions, when we're being asked one of those during an interview, it kind of like takes us aback and we had to pause and think. So by doing this event today, we're hoping that we'll prepare you a little bit more for those questions so that you don't get frozen up in that position. And we're going to show you guys some of the common questions in different fields or different areas of, let's say, soft skills that you could see in future interviews. For example, if you're being asked a question about teamwork, you're supposed to explain how do you deal with people that have maybe a different point of view, maybe a different solution to a problem. How do you handle those type of difference? How do you uh, go along to perform a task or meet a goal with a person or a group of persons that maybe you don't have the best friendship or the best relationship at work? And here's a few of the questions. As you can see, you can be talk about, like I said, how do you handle a situation where you and your colleague do not see eye to eye or not in the same page. You can also be to ask how do you handle a situation where you are trying to get information from someone, but you don't really find that way to get in and approach them and get that information. And the position that we are as technology students from STEM, we will definitely have this happen to us at some point where we have a higher up or someone that could potentially be our mentor or a work colleague that knows more about a certain topic, but we don't really feel like we could actually go up to them and ask them that question, or they don't seem to be very responsive, or maybe they don't really consider where you're coming from in terms of like, I don't have that much as much expertise as you. I would appreciate if you could take some time to help me out. Maybe you get dismissed a little bit, or maybe they'll have so much work going on that they'll tell you, yes, I'll help you out, but then they forget. So this is a question in case that you have had this experience before, or maybe later on in the future, when you're asked this question, then this is one of the experiences that you can go back to and talk about. Again, personalities, we're not all the same, unfortunately, but actually that's a good thing. Let me stop me right there. But yeah, sometimes for the clashing personalities can become such a wall between teamwork, and for us to find different ways or have different methods to go over past that wall, then it really count towards not only you answering the question, but you showing that you can work in any type of team environment. For client facing, which is another phrase for customer service, you would have to describe the actions and the methods that you take, not only to elevate the company's position with the customer, but also represent them in a good light and make the customer feel as welcome as possible, help them with any questions that they have, or just making them feel reassured that you as a person, not as an employee, but you as a person, care for them and for the situation that they're having. For this, we can see here what is a good way for you to make a good and lasting impression with a client, specifically if it's an important meeting or an important presentation. Uh, when have you had to deal with a difficult person that for no other reason you cannot get through them, and how do you handle that? And when working with a large amount of people, a good number, how do you manage to meet all their needs? And how do you deal with the stress of dealing with multiple people yourself? And like I mentioned with these questions, they're looking to see your thought process in all those different situations, and how do you handle that from the point of view of providing excellent customer service. Ability to adapt means that your day to day might not be the same routine all the time. Some days might be slower than usual. Other days you might be thrown off into the crazy, hectic world of whatever field that you work on or whatever in company, or something happens. Let's say a work crisis situation out of nowhere, and we or the interviewer will look to see how do you handle that sudden burst of stress or responsibilities. How do you adapt yourself, or what's your mentality in that situation so that you can continue to work properly, or find a way to manage everything that you have on your plate and then do a little bit more. Like you see here, a time where you were under a lot of pressure, what was going on, how do you get through it? Like I mentioned, what's your thought process in that regard, the actions that you take or the logic that you apply in order for you to get past through all the hecticness and try to meet all your responsibilities. For a common one, talking about your first job, what were the actions or the steps that you took in order for you to learn everything that you needed to? And in this part, I want to make a pause and talk about, for everyone that has had a first job experience at this point, we all know how stressful it is, or how we feel of not really knowing what to do or how to do it properly, and then having to rely on people to teach you that. So people will have always different approaches. You can be someone that is very proactive and likes to talk to other employees and try to get more information out of them, would always be behind them asking them, hey, how can I do this? Hey, can you give me a hand on this? Or hey, what what are the advice that you can give me in order for me to do this? Other people would try to go through the documentation. They will read everything available. Maybe they'll try to learn on by themselves in their free time. So this will have different approach. And as again, the interviewer will look to see how do you manage to get past the situation and the learning experience that came from that. I think the third one is, for me personally, the most important one. Talking about a time that you failed, it aside from being about your adaptability, it goes to show how you took a negative outcome and make it into a positive experience, or a learning experience that you take. So always keep this in mind. I've seen this in all the interviews that I had. I've seen this come up like 3 or 4 times. They're always looking to see, sorry, how do you deal with a situation that you maybe didn't handle properly, or that you didn't accomplish what you needed to do, and how do you move on past that? And if you were put in a similar situation later on in regards to the responsibility or the task at hand, how do you later on manage it after going through that failure. Time management, it's another big important part of work. So how do you will be juggling multiple responsibilities? How do you organize yourself and work to meet deadlines? If you had worked on a long-term project, how do you manage your time? How do you keep everything moving along, no parts being paused by anything? Or if you found, let's say, a stop in the road, how do you manage to still meet all the responsibilities for that project? This question would also can also be used to show your leadership in the sense that how do you deal with delegating different tasks within this project? How do you communicate it with the people under you? How do you manage to help them out to finish the task so that the overall project was finished? So keep in mind that there are questions here that can not only be used for the section that we're talking about, but you can also reinforce them a little bit more with other areas of your expertise. So how is your personal way of getting a to-do list done? Times where you had felt super overwhelmed with work, especially us students that are also working when we have all these responsibilities on top of us outside of work. How do we manage that stress? How do we make sure that we get it done by the end of the day or by the end of the week? And of course, time where you had set a goal for yourself. How do you keep yourself going towards that goal? While were the resources or the tools that you use to keep yourself in track and keep yourself checked so that you wouldn't fall behind on that? Communication, being that we had to communicate with people every day, I think this is another big section for us to focus. And you know, if you're able to have an easy way to communicate with people, I would say if you can build them upon that, it don't all, it doesn't only show in your personal life, it'll show in school, it'll show at work, how easy you make it for people to communicate with you and how easy you can communicate with others. So the first question, how were you able to persuade someone to see the things that your way at work? Like I mentioned before, um, different point of views, different clashing personalities. Sometimes you'll be in a position where you don't see eye to eye with another person, and that would put a stop on whatever project or task is that you're working on if it's a team. So how do you persuade that person to see the things the way you see them? How do you convince them to try the idea that you have in mind and see if it works and work as a team? So I like this one too, the second one. Describe a time where you were the resident technical expert. So changing the roles a little bit from what I mentioned before in regards to the first job that you had. So how would you, as a person that has all, let's say, all the knowledge for a certain topic or a certain tool, how would you let others know that you are approachable, or how would you let others understand the your expertise, the knowledge that you're trying to like, share with them? How would you make them feel comfortable for them to come to you and ask you questions about it? And all of this will encompass the way that you communicate with others. And like I said, the approachability that you yourself have so that others can come to you at any given time and you can see if you can help them at that right moment or if you can set up, let's say, a meeting or get back to them later on. And of course, going back to the kind of like relating to customer service, how have you handled trying to explain very difficult, no, I don't want to say difficult concept or any type of concept to a customer that is already frustrated. Let's say if you're working in IT and you have a user that has gone through so many hassles to finish a task and their machine is not letting them, whether it's for pending updates or any other issues that the machine can have, and you're trying to help them, guide them through the issue, try to get more information out of them, try to explain to them the process that you had to take in the troubleshooting, but they don't seem to be lead, letting you talk or letting you communicate. They seem so close at the point because of their own frustration. So how would you go about that situation? And motives and values here, it's more on the personal side, but it's one of the most important ones in the sense that they want to see your drive as an employee, but also as a person, your passions, your motivations. We see here what has been your proudest professional accomplishment. And aside of proudest, I also want to add to this that for us as students and also people that are like moving towards the industry and getting our feet wet already with different internships or different entry level positions, every small victory counts. And even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment, but as you get in, as you move forward and grow up um, as a professional, your proudest professional accomplishment can be even the smallest thing that you did for your team or the greatest thing that you have done for the company. Because in order for you to get to that, let's call the proudest professional accomplishment that you can think of, like the best thing that you could do for a company, you have to start with all those small victories. And all those small victories will build upon them to that point. But not only that, it will also build your confidence. And that will lead you to, let's say, more leadership positions. That will lead you to, for you to be someone of trust or someone that people can go to whenever they have an issue because they know that you can handle this confidently or you at least you can help them and put them in the right path. uh, the second one, a time that you were dissatisfied with your work, and here what could have been done to make it better. So this can be something that you personally did as a task that the, could have been the result for maybe an external situation that is happening outside of work. Maybe is some situation that is happening at work that didn't let you work properly, or at the end of the day, made you feel that you could have done this better. How do you deal with those feelings of thinking that your work wasn't that great, and how do you move forward? How do you learn from this? So that the next time that you grab on a task, you can perform it. And even if it doesn't come out the best way, you can still see it as something to be proud of, and you can still see it as something that is still helping your career move forward. And at a time that you were able to be creative at your work, and what was exciting or what was difficult about it. And for this one, being able to have a little creativeness at work really makes it more interesting. I would personally say it's like it makes it into a game, and that you get excited about trying to finish a task, and you're given free reins on how to go about it. So of course, a difficulty could be maybe you were trying to use a different tool, and learning that took a little bit of time or was a little bit more difficult than you expected. But of course, that could also be exciting that you could use a different tool from anything that you had already in your machine or in your toolbox. So seeing it as that would always help explain the situation to the interviewer. And most likely, if you were to get this question, you'll definitely be saying it with a smile in your face because we all love talking about times that we have been creative and times where we let our creativeness mindset just go on and go crazy. And now moving forward, we're going to talk about the STAR method. And the STAR method is essentially kind of like a structure slash template that you can use to build your answers for this behavioral interview questions. They're essentially kind of like a story that you tell the interviewer, and they relate to all the previous questions that we've seen. To the STAR method can be applied so that you can provide them with a proper answer. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And the first thing, situation, you're going to explain to them um, something that happened with your team or something that happened within your company that brought up a challenge for which you had to take action for, which leads us to task. From what I just said, what were the responsibilities or the goals that came within with this challenge for you? The actions that you took in order to address the situation, to complete the challenge or meet the goal that you had for, and then the results and the outcomes essentially of your actions, whether they were good or bad. And I say bad in the sense that if we're talking about a situation where you're asked about your failures, then the outcome of that failure is not necessarily positive. What would be positive is the learning experience that you got from there and the knowledge that you got from that failure. And we want to add that into the result because we don't really want to focus on the negative aspect of the situation. So essentially, the STAR method, when you're using that, you are taking your time to tell a story to the interviewer, and you're gonna bring it all up from the beginning, which is the situation, to the middle, the task and the action, to the end, which is the result. And with that, you will be able to explain properly the situation and also let the interviewer know of how you have traversed to all these different areas of work and how you have come forward and gotten to this point. And I'm gonna give you guys two examples about questions, starting with this one, but I want to try to do something differently now. For this question, I want to take some time and see if there's any volunteers willing to try and answer this question. So basically, tell me about a time that you showed initiative on the job. And if anyone wants to try it out, please let us know and we can unmute you or you can unmute yourself. Trying to see a chat. Hello. Oh, that was someone that muted themselves. Hey, Azim, I see you unmuted. I don't know if you want to answer the question or
Yeah,
let you.
sure. I mean, I can. All right.
All right.
So, um, I guess to answer this question, the example that I'll give, and I just thought of this in like the last 5 seconds, but it is so right now I am a TA in a way for the honors college working on like developing a course and also like assisting with the entire like operations of the course. So like kind of developing it along the way and then assisting students and getting all the material ready. And one of the things that we do proactively as part of this course is take feedback because we're developing it for the first time and implement it like in real time. So, for example, there was this one time when I was reading a feedback form and I saw that one of the students was complaining about the teams that they had. So I saw that as a problem because that specific student, like I know that he was working pretty hard on the project that he was. So I brought this up with my instructor and my other TA, and we decided to make team feedback forms and change up the way things were graded as part of the entire class. And that resulted in like more student satisfaction because people felt like they could have equal representation with the way they pulled their own weight, and they could hold their teammates more accountable to complete their work as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you for sharing it with us.
No problem. What's your critique on my answer?
Well, I wouldn't give it a critique right now. I want to take it back to, I'm going to keep it there and give you a critique afterwards because there's another part that I want to touch on that will bring it back to what you just said.
All right.
And if anyone else wants to try it, let me know. If not, we'll be moving forward. All right, so moving forward, I'm going to give you guys an example here. And while it's on the screen, I'm going to try to break it down so that you can understand it a little bit better. And it's a little bit lengthy, but here we see for the situation, they are explaining their position that they are within the company. And then they explain the accident that happened, which brings it all together. Now, from this type of situation, the task, you might not really see it at the beginning. You have to read it a couple of times, but essentially the task is now that this major player is out in the sidelines, and we have this huge campaign coming up. How do we, or how does the person, what do they have to do in order to meet that? And essentially, the task will be managing the preparations for the campaign pitch, which is what was left on after the executive was sidelined. And the action here, the action would always be kind of like the lengthiest part of your answer because you have to really um, explain your, like I said, your thought process, but also the step by step that you took in order to com- to comply with that situation and to get to your goals. So here we see that the account coordinator, they volunteered to fill in for the position, and then they coordinated with different teams so that they could have all the information set up, all the information that was going to be in that campaign pitch. That also shows um, the ability to work in teams and the ability to delegate properly. The coordinator came up with a plan on how to present the pitch. They communicated it properly, and they were able to have both of those teams see the person's idea the way that he or she wanted it to see them. So with that, we also again see the communications aspect of it aside of the leadership. And of course, the result, the client loved the presentation and they got a promotion after 6 months. So this example over here and the next one that I'm going to show, it's what we're trying to go for with the STAR method. You start the situation, like I've mentioned, as a story. You're you tell the employer what would be the challenge in that situation, the actions that you took for in order to face that challenge, and then the result of your actions. Here's another example, and we're gonna try to do the same dynamic again. Tell me about a time you had to complete a task within a tight deadline. I'm gonna give you guys about a minute and a half to see if someone else wants to volunteer and try to tackle this question. If not, we're gonna move forward with the example.
So I can say about a time that I had to complete something within a pretty tight deadline. So I work in IT help desk, and basically there was a user who had to travel outside of the US because she had this really big conference coming up, and she had a bunch of data that she needed to, or she had like documents, right? So her computer failed. So we had to give her a loaner like laptop, and I had to set that up. I was given the task to set that up to do this thing called like Time Machine. It was on a Mac, and I had to put basically all of her data into another computer. And a lot of things went wrong. I messed up about like 3 times because we tried doing like 3 different ways to transfer the data, but everything just kind of kept going wrong. So it was kind of difficult because she was obviously frustrated because she needed this by a certain time, and then we kept updating her saying, hey, look, this is happening now, so you can't pick it up today, but you can pick it up tomorrow. And it was a lot of back and forth, but eventually we were able to figure it out, and I was able to transfer the data successfully and safely, and she was able to go to her conference with the loaner laptop. And it was definitely stressful, but I definitely know how to transfer data now, so that's great. yeah, it's pretty much it. Don't know if anybody else has any other experiences that were kind of intense like that.
Thank you for sharing, Gabby. Again, we extend the invitation if anyone wants to tackle the question.
What would you do if you kind of don't really have or remember such an experience?
One thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be only work experience. If you have done any volunteer events in the past, or if you have been part of any organization, maybe even a school project, that could also count to your response to these type of questions.
Yeah,
Especially
but my
us.
memory of all my school projects is kind of hazy.
Man, don't worry, mine too, and I haven't graduated yet.
I mean, I think the closest thing I could consider is maybe I did some personal project things that I want to get done by X time. But even then, it's not too much, and it wasn't really something I had to do per se.
Hmm.
So it's a little more difficult to elaborate on that.
Okay, so keeping it within this question, I would consider maybe a school project or maybe an assignment that you had on a tight
Yeah,
deadline.
I'd probably
And
figure. Yeah, I'd probably find. Oh, sorry.
no, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd probably try and find a school assignment, but I think the problem with that specifically is that I mean, I probably wouldn't be able to come up with one in the middle of an interview. I'd have to like prepare it beforehand. And that kind of
That
Yeah.
be bad if they asked me this in the middle of an interview.
So a good thing to do, which is something that I do, is kind of like journal kind of situations and experiences that you've had. If you just like you're just sitting in your room and you literally can't think of anything, even like maybe a week later you can't think of anything, pay attention to what you're currently doing. You know, like, okay, in my classes I have to do this. I'm with the team. I got to do, you know, some assignment, this part of the assignment. Oh, now we have a deadline. Oh, what is my team doing? What are they not doing? So if you just for sure cannot think of anything, just start documenting. Now that you're aware, like, oh man, well, you know, I know that if literally someone in an interview asked me this question, I'd blank, because that's happened to me too, where I'm asked a question and I didn't prepare for it, and I'm like, yeah, I should have been thinking about this for sure, but definitely you got to prepare for it.
All right, I guess
Definitely
I'll
all the
try and
time.
find the thing that matches it. The things I have like I do have like a bunch. I actually do have a bunch of scenarios jotted down for other things, just not this one. That kind of
There you go.
sounds.
Now you can start thinking about it.
Yep. And I would also consider that I don't know how the industry views it, but if you're faced with a question that you weren't prepared for, in this case a behavioral question, then I would personally, if I were the interviewer, I would say it okay if you were to answer and tell me honestly that you cannot come up with a situation or in a scenario that you have gone through for you to answer this question. And but try to see if there's a way for them to kind of like switch up the question or kind of like relate it to something else. Maybe there's something that can be changed that will help you provide that answer. But like I said, I would personally wouldn't see it as a bad thing if someone came out with an interview with me and I asked them this question and they would tell me, I honestly cannot think of any scenario right now where this could be applied. But again, the more that you the more projects that you do, the more involved that you get, the more volunteer opportunities that you participate with. Um, and I mentioned a school already, but also your work experience. You're gonna come up with all these type of situations. And just like Gabby mentioned, if you're able to journal and write down all these different situations, all these different experiences that you can, then you'll definitely not only are you gonna come up with an answer for almost all of them, but you can start seeing how you can modify your answers around from other questions to kind of like help you answer other questions that you haven't really seen before. And if no one else wants to participate, by the way, thank you, Kyle, for the question. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the example for this one. And this example is a little bit simpler. Um, the interview the interview starts talking about the time that we're in a former company and an employee left, and they had all the tasks incomplete. So they were asked to assume the responsibility for all this task, and within that, they had they added an extra weight of learning experience, and on top of that, they also added the extra work that comes with completing that project. So what the person did, they created a task force, they delegated the work, and they were able to complete the said project. And like the other example, we see here that within their actions, they took their time to break down their doing what the project entailed to, and leadership comes up again in the sense that they created a team, they delegated work, and they were able to work all together and finish the day before it was due. So again, we're seeing leadership, we're seeing teamwork, we're seeing communication to an extent, because the action part of this example, it's you could say that it's very vague. So aside from the delegation and the creation of the team, you don't know what else they did to finish the project. But going back to what you said, Kyle, this is what I meant. Um, when I mentioned that you can take answers or scenarios that you already came up with, that you already had in mind from your past experiences, and maybe find a way to work around and show this other strengths that you have that are not only focused on one side. Like this one was talking about originally about tight deadlines and time management, but now you can show them that, oh, I'm able to work in teams. Not only am I able to work with different people, I'm also able to be a leadership figure with them, and I'm also able to communicate properly with them. And this is a result of our work together and my actions. And now moving more towards the tips for the interview. And here we're going to touch about preparing your questions and also answering the questions, which for you, Kyle, and for you, Asim, for the examples that you gave, you're going to find more information in this part. And we're going to go back to that. The first one, preparing your answers. So like we mentioned, aside from writing down thing for different situations, your past successes, your strength and your weakness, you know, all of that will encompass the first point, which is, recalling the situation. And what I meant here by show favorable behaviors or actions, going back to questions such as times you failed, the favorable behavior or action would be the approach that you took to get past through that negative outcome. That would be the favorable result. So how do you, again, how do you deal with failure? How do you deal with maybe failing a customer or a client? This is an example of kind of like making the negative outcome into a more favorable result, in the sense that you learn something, and from there you don't see yourself committing the same mistake again. uh, you can draw from job descriptions too. So if you're interested in a specific position, usually the first two paragraphs of a job before they get to the technical requirements and the expertise that they're looking on people, they'll have some sort of description or information of the type of person that they're looking for. And you'll see that most of the time they'll ask for someone that has excellent critical thinking skills, that is able to work with teams, they're able to be a leadership figure and take on tasks or responsibilities that are usually outside of the realm. When you read those descriptions, you can start seeing kind of, or have an idea kind of what that company might ask you for. Not necessarily, and I don't want to say this happens 100% of the time, but it helps you with the process of preparing your answers. And let's say if you were to keep track of all the situations and all the answers that you come up with, then you can definitely go through all the jobs that you applied, all the internships that you applied, and from there you can pull that information and then modify it to meet the response that you want. I mentioned it earlier in the presentation that you want to make your answer kind of like a story, have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and those three sections have to be clear enough for the interviewer to understand from the position that you were originally, the actions that you took, and the results that came from those actions. Um, be honest with your answers. Don't try to glorify yourself. Don't try to embellish the situation or the actions that you took, but also don't sell yourself short. And with this, I want to say that maybe we think of a situation, the answer that comes to our mind or the answer that we prepared, maybe we might think that it's not big, it's not enough to wow the interviewer. But like I mentioned, small victories together will lead you to bigger accomplishments. So even if a small victory is something that you had um, on your day-to-day happen, and this is the answer for the question in place, then be honest about it. Say it like it was. Don't try to like make it bigger than it was or make it like smaller than it was. And be very specific with your answers. Try not to be too vague from like the second example that we saw. Uh, the first example was good in the sense that the action, it was very detailed in regards to what the person did to meet the results that they wanted. So try to be specific, especially in the actions that you take. And here, this is where you want to like take a little bit more time whenever you're answering that question. Explain to them your game plan, your step by step, your the logic that went through making all these decisions, and then go tell them the result. And from the result, it's probably gonna be something short. Doesn't have to be too much, but like you said, show them how the team got through that, how you got through the situation, what you got from the situation, and maybe any, let's say, any rewards that you got from it, like the first example where the person got a promotion after 6 months. And when answering the questions, you want to take your time to answer them. Um, if it happens, like the situation where Kyle mentioned that he couldn't come up with he couldn't think of an exact situation that he had gone through in order to talk about tight deadlines. Even if you have the answer in mind, try to take some time, breathe, so that you can collect your thoughts and provide them with a perfectly clear answer. And remember, and I made emphasis in this part over here throughout the presentation, but you want to add extra value to your answers when possible. That's why when I was discussing the examples, I mentioned that within the answer that you give, you are able to show other strengths that you have. So if you're asked about a leadership uh, situation where you took initiative, where you worked to finish up, you managed a project, or you took charge of a presentation, you want to show that not only you have that leadership material, but that you also have that communications skill down, your teamwork skills are down, your ability to adapt, you have them too. And this is what I meant adding extra value to the questions. And hopefully the interviewer will pick up and your effort to not only showcase your leadership, but the other areas, and that will leave you in a better standing with them. Be positive. Again, going back to questions that would ask you to talk about a negative situation or a negative outcome. Try to be positive and try to keep focus on the actions and the results that you took from those negative situations, and in the sense of your learning experience, the knowledge that you got after that. Maybe if you went through that same situation again at some other point in your life, you can also relate that and detail that, tell them how you from that failure move forward, and when faced with the same challenge again, you were able to push through and get the positive results that you wanted. And the last tip is it's fairly general. I think most of the it's always advice, but remember to smile. And remember to smile not only because uh, it, it makes you feel approachable, and it also shows the interviewer that you're confident. But from that show of confidence and from that from that approachability, they can also see how you are as a person when being put in that business scenario. So that would also put you ahead of others that maybe don't have this skill down. So always, always, always while you're answering, remember to smile. And I see, Alex, here your question about not we're not when you're not comfortable smiling. Um, I hope this you don't get this the wrong way, but practice makes perfect. I am not someone that likes to smile. Even in pictures, I don't like it. And usually I get forced to smile for this type of situations. And the first interviews that I had, I always had that in my mind. I had to smile, I had to smile, I had to smile. But being so nervous, it would always make me be like more closed down. What I did for me that worked is that in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm nervous. I don't know how to laugh. And I'm kind of like in a lightweight, I'm making fun of myself so that pushed me to smile more. I don't know if it has happened to any of you guys when you're thinking like when you do something, let's say dumb, and you're like thinking, "Gosh, I'm so dumb," but you're saying that with like a smile on your face. So, Alex, if it works for you, try it. Definitely try to have that mindset in your mind, like, "Ah, oh, I'm not smiling." Even if it feels forced, even if you're not comfortable the first few times. So, a lot of people say it, and you're gonna see it for the rest of your life. Fake it till you make it, and when you fake that confidence, some people might pick up on it, some people don't. But the important thing out here is that the more that you do it, the less comfortable the work, in this case, smiling, gets. And the less comfortable it is, then it'll be easier for you to to smile more often and to smile during these interviews. And maybe during interview it becomes a little bit more of a casual conversation if you have the luck. And while you're having that light conversation, your smile will come up naturally as you get to know the interviewer more, a little bit more. But it's a I don't want to say it's a slight chance, but if you can make that the interview feel more casual, then you'll definitely be able to smile more. And that was all the material that we had prepared for you guys today. If you have any questions for us, any questions, any part that you want to go back in the slides, um, feel free to ask us.
I got one question.
Yes.
So, in my opinion, is it okay to display like swagger or confidence in an interview?
Like showing off a little bit, or like
No, like so, like hey, I have the knowledge in my head. I know what I'm doing, and something like that.
confidence is always good, but don't try to come off. And maybe as I'm saying it, I understand that it's might be a little difficult to understand, but don't try to talk or answer your questions as someone who's trying to show off their work, or as someone who's trying to like show the other person that they're the best at what it is that they're talking about. And it's a little bit counterintuitive because there are time and places where you definitely can show off and you definitely can just let all that confidence flow.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be times when you need to show a little bit more of humility.
Okay.
And within that, by humility, I mean not saying that you're going to downplay everything that you have done or downplay your role in let's say team decisions or projects or stuff like that. But humility with the fact that you did your work properly, that you can handle anything that comes your way because of the skills that you have, but also that you can work with others and you can help others out. If you come
Yeah.
off or if you give them the impression that you're gonna be this type of person that would do all the work, do it right, but will never. But when it comes to teamwork, they don't really have a good mark. Then that lets them know that this person, albeit great in terms of work, they cannot work on a team or be part of a team.
Like,
So
like if I ever want to display confidence, I want to like say I'm like I can do this problem, I can do this. But the reality is, I want to display like sound like okay, here I can see this problem, but at the same time to show that I can work in a team as well, in a team setting as well.
Yeah. So if you were to think of an example where, let's say, you use your expertise to help others or to help someone that at that point they needed help, they were looking for a source of information or someone to give them a hand, then that is, I would say, an example of a situation where you can definitely let that confidence flow and have a little bit of, like swagger, because you're doing it for the sake of helping others. You're not really doing it for the sake of elevating yourself. As I say that, I know there are some people in life that they would help others, quote unquote, but just for the sake of saying that they help others.
I did
Which,
help like some kids in different situations once were problems. So
yeah,
and did
so
for some children back in the day as well.
that
I
is something that you can definitely be confident about and show off your work with that.
the reason why I did it because I was like I wanted to help the person, not because I wanted to actually earn money or respect for the person. I just want to help them.
Exactly.
I wanted to just bring up a little point here. Um, Most of the time, the behavioral part of the interview is really important, mainly because whoever's interviewing you, they really want to know if you'll be able to fit in the team. At the end of the day, recruiters or whoever's interviewing you, they don't know who you are. So that's why they ask you these kind of like specific questions. And like when you're being interviewed, you kind of, your mind goes blank and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Right. That's why it's so good to like kind of journal it, just so you kind of like practice. And it's like, okay, yeah, these are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. This is how I'm fixing and working on them. Um, but you have to kind of go into it with the mindset of like, hey, I'm talking to a stranger right now. Now we're not going to be friends or anything, but like they're asking me questions because they don't know who I am. I'm literally sitting in their office, and I want a job from them and I want to be in an environment where I'm going to see them probably every day. So they want to know like who they're working with. So that's why it's really important to like kind of know who you are, which is, it's not something you really think about. You're just kind of like going through your days, just like, yeah, I got to get this done. I got to do this. I'm solving this problem, whatever. You never stop and think like, oh yeah, I did do that and I solved it this way. And that's actually a really good thing. Right. But try to pay a little bit more attention to yourself in that sense and see what you're good at, see what your weaknesses are too, and like how you can kind of improve that, because you're gonna run into people they don't know you and they want to know you, especially if you're gonna be in a team. If you don't know yourself, the person who's interviewing you is like, all right, so not sure what to do with that information. That doesn't help me know if you're gonna fit with the team or not. That's why you kind of have to, again, repeating myself, you have to go in thinking like, hey, they don't know me. So what can I tell them so that they do know me? And if you are struggling, trying to answer a question, I would recommend, because like I've been in that situation a little bit too much, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to go into the interview and I'm just going to wing it. It's fine. I know myself. And then you go blank. I pretty much have learned to, like what Andres was saying, you kind of start creating your own kind of like scenario, right? Like they'll be like, oh, tell me about a time where you had to, manage a deadline, whatever. And then I'd be like, I'm really trying to think about it. I, right off the top of my head, I can't, but I will tell you about this other scenario. And then as you're starting to explain a story, it's like your mind starts like, your memory starts jogging, right? So try using that technique if you find yourself stuck, but I would definitely recommend for you guys to like just try to like sit down one day and just be like, all right, so what have I been through? How did I solve this problem? What are some common things that will be asked that I can actually answer? And just prepare. Try not to wing it. Try not to wing it. Even if you're like a master of winging things, try not to. Just a little bit of practice. It doesn't hurt. And then with the smiling thing, so I don't really have that problem because I'm always smiling, which is kind of weird, but like I'm always smiling. If you struggle with that though, one way is to kind of piggyback off of the recruiter, I mean, not the, well, maybe it's a recruiter, the interviewer, right? So if you see, like, they try not to like show emotion, but sometimes they do. If you see that they're kind of like smirking, that's like, all right, signal, all right, they're getting a little comfortable with me. They like my response. Maybe I can, right? Show a little, right? So that's one, I guess, technique that you could use if you're really struggling and you're like, oh man, I am such a robot right now, I don't know what to do. Just like you see a little smirk or they're smiling or laughing, you're like, haha, yeah, that's really good, and that's it. And then you'll start to get a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, that's all I wanted to mention.
Another thing to point out is that if you have the chance to, let's say before a meeting, converse with the interviewer a little bit, or maybe try to like lighten the mood a little bit with a joke or something, so that when you get into the interview portion of it, you will already feel a little bit more comfortable with the person. And just to add the smiling thing back to this, uh, the moment that they smile at you or the moment that you smile at them, it's already a start for them to make for each other to feel more comfortable with this stranger. And with that sense of being comfortable with that person, then it's easier for you to take your time and answer, and for your answers to feel a little bit more concrete, because it would be like it would go from being you're just talking to a stranger who's asking you about your life or your work experience, about someone that, like, okay, this is someone that I could see already see myself working with, um, you know and build from that, so that when it comes to answering these questions, you are not at a point where your mind is gonna go into like a block mode, and you won't be able to process. So definitely work on all those little things that would make you comfortable. Maybe if you're able to see the room, maybe find a chair or something, try to position yourself a little bit better. That physical comfort will help you stay sharp for when the questions come. I'm reading here what Jose mentioned. Oh, thank you, Halsey, for your comment here. Like he's saying, he's don't be afraid to crack a joke with a person. Uh, you know, it's a trial and error. Maybe they'll laugh, maybe they won't, but at least you're trying to make something more of that relationship with a person, aside from being just an interviewer and someone looking for a job. Like I mentioned, if you see that mentality that I could see myself working with this person at the moment of a joke, that the person laughs, that's it, that you know it already. Okay, they they understand my humor, I might be able to work here. So definitely work on those little things to make you feel more comfortable during the interviews. Like I said, that would make your answers flow way better. And with that, you'll also feel more comfortable to ask for a little bit of time if you need it to before you answer. If you need to grab a sip of water, if you're allowed to have a bottle of water with you, or just take a deep breath, relax, and then uh, let your mind go to work, then you'll definitely go through for that. But going back and mentioning it again, because I know it's not set in stone to happen, try to prepare as much as you can for these type of questions. And like Gabby mentioned, try to write down all these things that happen in your work life, or maybe in the organizations that you're part of, any volunteer opportunities that you do, uh, works, um, your schoolwork, anything that you see yourself using, your communication skills, your leadership skills, your ability to adapt. Write them down and keep them in a document, or a notebook, and build from them later on. You can find multiple lists of behavioral questions. Some of them are sectioned, some of them are not, but you can use them to start thinking already of situations where you went through, and that you can develop an answer for that. And again, within that own answer, if you're having difficulties formulating the question, then take a look back at the answers that you already have. Maybe from there you can find an idea on how to answer them. and maybe change them around, modify them so that they meet the criteria for other parts of questions. Again, if you guys have any more questions, please let us know.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if I missed this or not, but could you, I mean, for my sake and for anyone that was listening in at the time, give me a little bit more feedback on the answer I gave for your mock question and like what I could improve on?
Yeah. If you can refresh my memory a little bit, I believe that you mentioned that you were have some students displeased with the work when you were a TA, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. And the steps that you took were?
So I contacted the instructor and my other
Mhm.
TA, and then we decided to change grading structure. My TA and I made a feedback form together, and then put that out for the class. And as a result, the class like performance, not performance, but like student satisfaction improved as a result of that.
Perfect. So in terms of the way that you mentioned it, of course, I know you told me that you got it into 5 seconds. You got the situation and the task down to a T. You explained to them that you had the students displeased with the grading system that was in place. You know, they were trying to get some information or some feedback from the people in charge, in this case, the professor. And before the professor uh, could even get to them, you took that initiative and started working towards that result that you got there. So definitely in the result part, um, if you can mention maybe, I want to say numeric values. I don't know how feasible that would be for that specific situations, but you mentioned that the satisfaction went up. Um, if there were any analytics in place that could tell you like the amount of students that were dissatisfied dropped by X percentage, or maybe mention the grading after the how many students passed the class after the grading system was changed. That would also help you with the question if you were to be asked that. Um, and I'm trying to explain myself better a little bit better is um, what I mean by that is that if you provide, I would say, numerical evidence within the result, then that shows a little, it kind of like gives it a little bit more strength to to what um, to what the result would be and to what the interviewer would think of you. The other thing is that for for your actions, if you are able to provide like a step by step, aside from reaching to the professor and everything, let's say you can add a little bit of maybe I sat down with them, I met with them, we reviewed other alternatives for the grading system, and we also reviewed the feedback that we were getting, and from all the information that we compiled, we were able to move forward with this new grading system, and then that will take you then to the resort that you mentioned.
Okay, so the two main takeaways I'm guessing, and thank you for the feedback by the way, is like number one, to elaborate a little bit more on the actions that I took. Like for example, I also reached out to the individual student and got like more feedback from them, which I didn't mention. Maybe I should have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as part of the result, well, this is an ongoing experience, so that's a good idea. I'll actually put that into our next survey. So to get more like, I guess you said quantifiable data into this.
Exactly. So by if by the end of the class you are able to get that quantifiable data, when you have then is not only a great list of the step by steps that you took, but also the result will essentially be as concrete as it can be. So in the event that you would be asked this question during an interview, then you would definitely leave a lasting impression with an interviewer because they would see that okay, Asim definitely handled the situation. He had the leadership necessary for this. He was able to communicate with the students and get more information from them. He was able to communicate with the professor and let him see of a new alternative for this, which then later on provided the results that they have. And with while you formulate that answer, you're gonna see that not only do you cover the leadership part, but also you're covering um, communications, you're covering teamwork, you're covering your ability to adapt to a situation, which of course, you don't want to have students being displeased with the grading criteria. So you adapted to that, and then you help them with that, which also entails to customer service.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The only question for to end the night is that, as like, if you go into an interview and and you want to prepare for this interview for this particular day, do you have to stay up on it? Do you have to stay up on it? Make sure you look good. Make sure you actually know your procedures, your algorithms before going to an interview.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. Do you before you like do you have to prepare for your interview? Do you want to prepare before you do the interview or do the technical interview?
So how do I want to prepare the night before the interview? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking? Okay, so for that, um, one thing to do that I mentioned here in the presentation is to look at the job description. And like I said, it's not 100% chance, or it's not set in stone that you can find some information there that would help you with the questions that they're gonna ask you. But you'll definitely kind of like see what the company is looking for in terms of an employee, and how the company culture would look like. And from that, you can infer a little bit on the questions that you might get. And in terms of preparation, Alec, you would I don't think it would be feasible. Let's say that you have an actual list of all the answers that you can prepare for behavioral questions, because again, there's a lot of behavioral questions. So I don't think it would be a feasible thing for you to like study all of them the night before. You don't want to overload yourself. And something to keep in mind about the STAR method is that when we're creating these stories, when we're creating all these answers for the questions, we're not creating a paragraph or two or a script that we're going to memorize. What we want to focus on is having being able to pull out that situation, and we already know what came from that situation, in the sense of these are the skills that I cover with, and this is the situation that I went with, this is the actions that I took with, and these were the results. I don't know if it's clear enough for you guys, but what I'm trying to say is that don't go about practicing your behavioral questions or any answers to any type of like questions in the behavioral field as a script or something that you have to memorize, because you're gonna overload your brain. You're maybe you if it comes to the point that you prioritize a question and you try to memorize it, and then you're faced with a completely different question, that's it. Now you were taken by surprise. The preparation that you took wasn't worth it for the moment, and now you had to on top of that, you had to think of a situation and you had to provide them with an answer. So think always consider the STAR method. Aside from being a tool to help you build your answers, keep it in mind as if it were kind of like a structure or an outline for your answers, and let the conversation flow as normal as possible. Again, emphasizing, don't make this into a script that you're going to memorize. Uh, some interviewers might be able to pick on that you're memorizing stuff and you just like answering to that, if you're lucky to get the question that you studied for. But yeah, try to keep that in mind, so when you're responding, it's like you're having a conversation. It's not like you're responding to a question of a test, which you are responding to a question, but you want them to know that you're not essentially a machine. You want them to know that you have your own failures. You also work at a different pace than others, and you have your own way of thinking. So always keep that in mind. And the more flowy that you can, the more casual you can make that conversation and your answers, the better it's gonna be for you, I believe personally, in terms of being able to answer them properly and to answer them correctly.
And by the way, I already did like 2 interviews since I came to this workshop. Since I came, I already did one interview one interview for a competition company, and I already did one for Chase.
Nice.
So I got experience with interviews right now. Technical wise, I already did like one of them already. So one with Amazon.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, interviews keep building on themselves as well. They are experience. They could also be, maybe you could consider some of them as a failure, or some your your interviews that you go through. If you don't get the job, or even if you get the job, you can also use them for this type of answer. So, I my first job I applied at Panera and I failed because I was so nervous to talk and I couldn't answer the questions properly. And from that, I learned, okay, I need to take my time, don't answer right away, and actually, breathe in, breathe out, and consider what I'm being asked, and try to keep myself calm. And from that, all the time in the back of my mind, I have this little like tiny Andres working on and letting me know whenever I'm nervous or not. And it's working right now. So it's the type of like different routines that you build on that are going to help you not only with the interviews but also dealing with colleagues at work or different situations. It's all the little things that you go through in life that will prepare you, and whether you are successful or not the first time, they will continue to prepare you so that you can tackle them again and tackle even greater things.
I do have one final question if we have time before we end.
Go right ahead.
All right. So I'm actually a mechanical engineering major, not computer science or computer engineering. But when it comes to roles like technical consultancy or even other technical roles like software engineering, I'm open to actually work in them. It's just I have the programming knowledge that I have is in a language that it's a bit old, and most people in the computer software and IT field don't use it. And B, like programming at least as of the moment isn't my strong suit. So when it comes to more technical interviews, which I know that most people actually spend like weeks for practicing, is there something that you'd recommend me in my place? Like for example, I think I have the way you'd think about a problem. Like if you give me something I guess logical or mathematical, I could maybe say, okay, I'd form like these modules and then these subroutines, and this is what I'd put in, these are the variables I'd have. But in terms of putting it in a running program, maybe I wouldn't be able to do that. So how much do you think that stands in my way, honestly, at this point, going into potential career paths that I mentioned? And being in this situation, what would you recommend me? I know it's not behavioral, but in case you guys have experience with other kind of interview formats.
Okay. To answer your question, and I want to preface it by saying that I am not the most experienced person in the world, and I still have lots to learn. So I hope that you get something out of my answer, at least a little bit. But for your question, the first thing is to go for it, even if you don't have the technical expertise that you think that you're gonna need. I would rather have someone work for under me in my own company or whatever company it is, and know that they don't have all the required technical expertise, but that they're still able to work within the teams in the company. They're still able to, you know, put in a lot of effort. They can learn from their mistakes and they can move forward from that. They don't get caught up in all the negative aspects. All those little things, and I'm putting myself in the position of maybe the recruiter. I would rather have a person like that working for the company than someone that has all the technical expertise but can't really handle, uh, doesn't have a good set of soft skills and can handle like day-to-day interactions and stuff like that. And the thing with technology is that it's ever changing. So as you continue to learn, there's going to be more stuff to learn in the future. So your learning will never end. And you can prepare the best that you can for a technical interview, but you can also show them your drive, your passion to work in, and say, in this type of like technical consultant positions. And you, personally, they would see that, you as him as a person, you can definitely grow within the company and learn from that. And if opportunity meets luck, then you will definitely get the job, even without the technical expertise that it requires for. And when you get the job, then you'll have a new road or a new path for you to get that knowledge that you seek.
All right, perfect. Thank you. That was a bit of encouragement.
You're welcome. Any other question before we end for tonight, guys? Well, if that's the case, I want to thank you all again for being here and spending this time with us. We hope that this information was beneficial to you, and we can continue to help you out from this point on moving forward. And again, any other questions that you have, or any other, if you're looking for feedback on your resumes, or maybe the answers that you create for this type of questions, feel free to reach us in the Discord, and we'll try our best to give you a proper answer and to help you out. Uh, I hope all of you have a wonderful night, and we look forward to having you in our future events. Thank you all.